So I said, okay, I'm willing at this point to go down there for a full work day a week to get this thing running, and then a full work day every other week along with my other members. And so it became a question not of what the capacity was, but what the time commitment was for us.
Yeah, so if you want, say, 250 gallons a week, it seems goofy to me to have a 250-gallon processor. Just to run it once a week.
Absolutely. Unless, of course, you're in the, unless you're, of course, you're in that situation where the expense in time and everything means doing a whole bunch at once when you're in your location. If you are in a place where you can monitor it, if you're talking, here's some numbers. Appleseed, we'll just AS. 40-gallon processor. If you're down, say you're down 2 to 5 weeks of the year and you're running 4 batches a week, I mean, that's pretty light processing, really. People can run these things pretty hard. But that's going to be 1,900 gallons a year if you have somewhere in the 3 to 5 week downtime. If you run a 250-gallon processor, you cut that time in half. You only run 36 weeks of the year, and you run 2 batches in a week. 18,000 gallons? That's 18,000. One of Steve's setups, what you have some that can run about 24,000 gallons a year.
Our Appleseed processor-based system will do 24,000 gallons a year.
With how much monitoring?
About an hour and a half a day.
Okay.
What's that to your tank, Steve?
50-gallon processor. Washing and drying 2 batches at a time.
And what's the footprint of that?
4x5. We sell a double dry system that will produce around 80,000 gallons a year.
So this is, I'll just call this Steve for now. This is a 2 Appleseed plus dryer component, which is another pallet, right? Palletized setup. That is how many gallons?
We have a customer doing 1,000 gallons a week doing that.
And I can pull up pictures of that type of setup. The point here is you can make an Appleseed work up to a pretty large capacity with this regular monitoring. If you can only go someplace and you have certain skill sets that allow you to do processing on one day and then follow-up work throughout the week and so on, which is the situation I found myself in, then you might want to size up for that. What are the other reasons people are sizing up? Are people trying to make money at this, or what are we doing?
Yeah, I think that from a scale perspective, it's a matter of the way we get the reveals the same thing. You get so much of it, you need to reach a critical mass through a batch. It takes a while for us to do that. It's a monitor. So it's still the same issue where we want to collect and aggregate and be able to get rid of it quickly, but we don't have a lot of storage space. So quite frankly, it's to sort of be able to, I guess, mitigate what our supply issues are when we get our feedstock.
So that's, again, that question of footprint. What's your footprint back to here? If you have a footprint that allows only for X amount of storage and you need to get that out of there, this is where we found ourselves with the Appleseed. We didn't have enough washing capacity. We wanted to build up. We have an 18-foot diameter grain bin we're in. And we've got a lot of height, but we don't have a lot of floor necessarily. Yeah.
So just to answer your question that you asked before, we're basically scaling up our oil collection, formalizing our oil collection, so we anticipate having a lot more work in process now.
Okay. So there's the limited storage, or there's the question of limited oil. And some folks that I've talked to have found themselves where they are actually running into this, where they're getting oil in chunks. All of a sudden, I find a bunch of oil, and I want to be able to run that fast. Well, maybe they're running an Appleseed, but they want to have a big processor on hand for that capacity. What some of those folks have done is they've used a big plastic tank and they tried to heat everything up in their Appleseed. This is where you can start to really run into problems. And I really want to encourage you to think seriously through the system. Do I really need bigger? Obviously, you're all sitting here and think you need bigger, so I'm not going to try to convince you otherwise. What are some of the other things? I don't see anything on the
I don't produce any biodiesel work on the feedstock side, but I just want to get some scale. Our goal is we're growing exponentially, and it's we compound interest with oil. It's kind of my thing. So, and our goal is to get as big as we can. I believe that this niche market has a window of opportunity where you can really make inroads. It's not as competitive as it will be in 24 months. Not as competitive as it will be in 60 months. So
and I don't mean this as a hit, but this is another aspect that people run into. Unanticipated or uncontrolled growth. And one of the things that farmers are running into, and one of the reasons that we decided to do a growing out of the Appleseed or do larger scale, is some of these farmers are saying, I want to control this aspect of my farm better. I want to at least mitigate the price of diesel by producing some biodiesel. I want to be able to capture some of that market or at least help my neighbors. So that's another aspect of, okay, so given that, I want to pull up a couple of the other, this is just a smaller oil processing system that a person was using to have, they basically have a couple 100 gallons of oil to start with. And they said, okay, well, I want to fill up my drums, let everything settle over time because I'm getting some oil that's not great. So they were using a heat band. I think this floppy thing was using, but he was using a multi-stage, just an overflow setup. And I want, when I fill those bins up, I want to run a big process. And no, you can stay at the Appleseed level because you're monitoring and everything's happening right at home, so it doesn't really make a difference. So that 250 gallon plus didn't make sense for him. Then we saw people, with the QB collection, they were running into footprint problems. So what this one made sense for scaling up was they actually used their processor for their storage. And their storage limitation was then mitigated by the fact that they could store, heat, everything in that same big tank, boom, batch of biodiesel as soon as it was full. So that was one option for them. So this was another reason for scaling. What I'm primarily concerned with, and what I mentioned at the forum, was skill sets that you need to actually do this. And this is kind of more the interactive part of this. Have we covered enough of why you would do it? Are there some other reasons, folks?
I think the one there that's not, there's time. For us to run 240 gallons, we're going to have to run like 7 batches. So we're going to have to be there most of the evening, even with 2 processors messing around.
Okay.
Even going to an 80-gallon processor, it's a 50% larger batch size, so a lot less time.
And this 40-gallon Appleseed, we were finding we were trying to do 2 batches a day and that type of thing. And so that time aspect was a big part of it, again, because of the amount of travel going on. We have one guy that lives down in Oak Park, Chicago. He's got a 30-mile drive north. I've got a 60-mile drive south. So the time, being able to compress that with one unit and actually do it in shifts with a shift change in the middle of the 250-gallon process literally increased our capacity.
So using an Appleseed with an intake barrel, you can do 300 gallons in 12 hours. So there really is quite a bit of capacity there. But at some point, it becomes much more expedient to do that larger batch.
Yeah, and I don't think that a 250-gallon batch is that that key number. The only reason I'm saying 250 plus is that's also a matter of working with what our standard capacities are. If you're using 22%, that's a 55-gallon drum of ethanol too. So Steve's point of using this continuous process and using a smaller capacity processor, yes, again, that's that time problem though, where you have 12 hours of monitoring. And some of you may be comfortable leaving your processor. I'm not. We're on an organic farm. If we have a spill, we've got a really big problem. If you have a big secondary containment system and all that even, I'm still not particularly comfortable leaving a process running. So maybe also another reason. What are some of the skill sets involved in starting to go up? You have some major considerations. In our case, we wanted to have a welded system. At first, I started looking at GL1 day stuff, doing some kind of non-water wash. We've been using water wash, and it hasn't been a problem yet, but I began to worry about that. If you've seen the gram hiling stuff, you know, we said, okay, well, we could do a large tank with a heater built in, and in the north, you can get 275-gallon oil tanks pretty easy. So, multi-stage, or rather a stacked tank, was the option we were going to take. Move from the top tank down into the bottom for heating and processing. And then we said, well, why don't we just cut the middle of it out and do a big one? So we have a 550-gallon tank now that was just welded and is being finished this weekend, actually. And our experience was there were a whole lot of skill sets we didn't ask before we started going to a little bit bigger. And so if you look at the drawing here, what's the first skill set you really want to have? You know, basic plumbing skills are good, but basic plumbing skills might not even be it. Bigger, more serious considerations, we said first skill set's a plumber. And even better, if you're going to get inspected, somebody that's actually a bond plumber would be even better. Some other skill sets, anybody?
Electrician?
We just got an electrician. And this was very big because the very helpful guy that knew about electricity when we first started helped us out a lot and didn't ground our 220. We didn't have any problems, luckily, but little minor details like that.
Welder?
A welder. And a welder, you know, you've got options for MIG. As a matter of fact, we've been shocked by how a basic, crappy Lincoln MIG works for some of this stuff. What's that?
The stainless stuff that you do?
No, we didn't do stainless. We did just steel. And we actually did some tanks out of 50-gallon drums. The 023 wire, for the pretty small stuff, you can use that to sink into some of the holes. We actually also, for our larger capacity wash systems, did a 3-stack 55-gallon drum tower that's reinforced and bolted to the wall. But that was just put together with a MIG and pressure tested. It's pretty basic. So for that also, shop, if you've got somebody that says, I've got a roller, if you're doing drums, that's a nice one. If somebody's got a TIG, and you're working with this thicker wall stuff, if you're working with propane tanks, they can take it probably. Get away with taking it. Yeah.
So what would you rate your core reactor cost, not mind the welding and everything else? What would that?
Well,
you cut costs.
what we started doing was identifying skill sets of people that wanted to be in the co-op.
Okay.
But you know, most basic welding even if you've got, you know, kind of a good old boy price, and you're gonna pay somebody $50 an hour to do this stuff.
Yeah, we just had a bunch of 4 tanks welded, and if they're, you know, it's about $500 to have a 4-tank system welded with the cone bottom. That's what we found anyway, so.
And did you have the cones rolled, or did you just buy cones?
No, we just bought cones. We bought cones and then we cut the ones nipples out, like 2-inch nipples for them.
Okay, did the Bosbeck thing. If you don't know cone bottom tanks, I swear, just buy the Bosbeck cones, 1-inch NPT bottom. I think they're out of Texas.
They're great. The cone bottoms are awesome. We use them for settling. It's just the 1-inch is too small, so we have to make them a little bigger.
How can you spell that?
Bosbeck, B-O-S-S-B-U-C-K, as in buck you're going to shoot. So I think they originally made them for feeders. There was another question.
It's not a question, it's more of a statement. I don't know if anybody here is in Denver or close to it, but I'm not co-op and I don't really need any money, you can reimburse me for gas or wire, but I've got a stick and a MIG welder. I don't really take weld at all, but I'll throw it out there. My Tuesdays off, it'll be easy enough.
And it's
Because
if you're doing drums, it's worth experimenting on and worth finding somebody that wants to do it, because your welder that you pay is going to get frustrated by trying to do this with drums.
No, I fabricate all the time. I love it. But that's just, I don't even think there's anybody here from Denver, but there you have it.
See you biodiesel right here.
So I'm not sure how this has come up for you, and I've had a hard time corroborating this as a necessary skill set from other co-ops. But being in a municipality that has a really rigid fire department, and expanding into an adjacent municipality like a city, we really want to have an engineer stamp or be ready to address that. And so if we can find, and they're asking for like a mechanical engineer, which we have to go down to Phoenix to get, and don't know anybody directly, can't include them in the co-op kind of thing. Like and we know a lot of people in our area, but everybody has to go to, the big city to have somebody do it. So
I think that can be answered in 2 ways, and the way I answer that is find a politician.
I'm a politician.
Yeah, well,
We know a lot. We know a lot too, but really, doesn't it just come down to the fire inspector saying, if you're going to make this material yourself? The fire inspector in Prescott basically said, we have to have if you're going to do it yourself, and this was UL. Sorry.
I'm going to park that one because actually Steve and I probably both have some comments on dealing with a single troublesome technocrat, and you may not be able to. Problem inspections. Other?
No, I have 2 cents for that one too.
More 2 cents, we'll park it for a second. The other aspect in terms of dealing with people, human resources, things like that, is project management. And I didn't take this probably as seriously as I should have. And how many people here have seen Google Docs or some kind of planning document thing? Let me pull it up, because I can't tell you how much I appreciate Google Docs. I'm going to pull this off for a second. We've got a version of it up.
You need to put Scrounger on that list. That's all I need is Scrounger.
Well, this is we happily call John our wingnut, the recycler. Brings us tanks and how many do you want? And, Craigslist is also your friend for things like that. I'm going to pull 2 things up on Google Docs here. I'm going to pull up a little bit a working doc of the membership guidelines. And first off, I'll just is that? Can you read that whole thing? Okay. So this is a simple, Google does a new docs, it's a sharing system, it's a basic document. However, all edits on this system are tracked with a revision history. As you can see, my instructions to my co-op members. And this is an older version, so I'll just run down, asking each person. Here was my initial attempt at project management. Hey, can you put your name on something? Can you guys take something, volunteer for me? It's not happening. So I just recently identified a guy who has been interested in this a long time. I didn't really take into account his skill set of project management. He works for AT&T Digital Security. Of course he manages these kind of projects. This is easy for him. So I just handed it to him to start doing. The recycler as well. But what this did help us do, because we were so far spread out, and we were a pretty diverse group that had different timelines for when we could be there, is we were always sharing information. We were always able to, oh, Colin wanted to take, there was some old fuel that we didn't feel too comfortable doing anything with. Well, we dropped it. It was fuel oil, actually. And he's got it over, so fine, we'll do that. And, we would use just highlighting and everything like that. And on top of it, what we also did with this, just as a basic a check system for what we got accomplished, we just cut out pieces of the document and dropped them in the bottom for completed tasks. You can use any kind of project management software, but this was one that worked pretty well for us. It's free. It's very easy to invite people as collaborators. So if I want to just share with folks, I can drop any of these. These are all people that have sharing on this right now. If I just drop a person's email address into here, invite them as a collaborator, I'm running. They then can read it. A little bit about dealing with the co-op level. Once I started identifying these folks, and I want to make sure that they are, they understand what they're getting themselves into. I do have a member agreement. I ask people to sign it. It's not a binding agreement by any stretch. We just do it to kind of lay out responsibilities, lay out what they will do. And you have to decide for yourselves what this is going to work with. Our fuel cost, maybe we're low. I'm sitting at this conference realizing that I'm probably quite low. I'm literally doing fuel cost at cost, $1 a gallon. We're producing for somewhere in the area of 78 cents a gallon or so. And then we decided, okay, should we become more efficient, we may change this. But this is an agreement for now. These are some older numbers when we were working with the Appleseed. This was a way also of sharing with each member, right in the document, what had been produced, how many hours it took, assuming 100% yield, if it passed 327 in this case, where our problems were. So that really helped with our planning process and actually collaborating. PowerPoint back up there.
Did you include your oil cost in that figure?
I'm sorry, what?
Your oil cost, is that included in that figure?
Our collection, like the cost of collecting oil,
Yeah.
we did not. As part of, we do not pay for oil one, but there is a cost in terms of time and collection. We did use a separate accounting of that for a short time.
Does the fuel cost also pay for the equipment you've already purchased?
No. Fuel cost is treated separately. The way that we divided finances, just to give an idea, we used a separate capital fund, which I manage, and a usables fund. we had folks pay into both the capital fund $450 per person. Because we really worked backward. We said, how much capacity do we want to have? What's it going to cost to do it? And I came up with that number to give a pad. And I didn't want this to be something inaccessible, something that was going to be very high cost, because I wanted to show how it can be done relatively cheaply. You can buy a fairly inexpensive system, produce a bunch of fuel, but if each member has at least about a $500 stake in it, in my opinion, they've got a little bit more to lose. As people start to invest more, they start to think about whether or not they're actually going to get involved. So that break point for me seems to be around the $500 mark for co-op members. Seems to work. This is another example of a prettier tank system. This is the Murphy's Machine one. He I think has started to sell plumbing and everything for it now, but he mostly sells plans and asks you to build it yourself. Says you should build it yourself. I threw up Steve's beautiful trailer design one. This about 500 gallon capacity.
Up to 1,000 maybe, depending on the house.
That's what he was saying about his two tank, 80-gallon tank Appleseed systems.
Just a 2-cent comment. For those of you guys who have formal structures to your co-ops, be careful about your membership pricing. I think it's by federal law, but in most of the state of California, if you're offering a membership above $300, you actually need to register with the Securities and Exchange Commission. So non-formal stuff, it's really probably all cool. But if you've got a formal structure, just sort of be a little bit careful in case one of your co-op members gets upset later on. They're not getting their share of biodiesel, and they want to take some action.
I should also mention that incorporated into that was the option to buy members out, but we haven't set up a legal structure to do it. But buying a member out at $450 was included in there. Other question?
Yeah, the Murphy's thing, that's not open source. Is this
No.
open source?
Steve
Is
built
there any
these.
open source Appleseed besides the Girl Mark one?
Well, the Appleseed, we're talking about larger.
Any kind of like,
There's a ton of information available on the web about Appleseed. You got a lot of crap to sort through.
yeah.
Honestly,
I got lost in
the
the
collaborative, I point people to the collaborative biodiesel tutorial, quite honestly, and that's,
I would say the plumbing stack that we have is perfect, and I would encourage anybody to copy it.
So the diagrams for that are available?
Go to our website, Green World Biofuels, and there's some pretty good pictures.
Green World?
Yeah, I really wouldn't change a single valve. It's after thousands of batches, it's ideal.
I'm sure you can keep those here.
The whole system, I say copy it.
Okay.
and he's got some pictures of different angles and everything. It's not like he's put it at an angle so you can't copy it, honestly. But he's pretty clear about that. That question kind of was why I started taking that 275-gallon oil tank approach. Was we will put together some general information about the tank system that we built.
The schematic that you had up there, will that?
That's Graham Lamming stuff. Go to grahamlamming.com now. He just put up he's a Brit. He advocates waterless washing, doing some other things. But a good resource. His new push-pull processor is another option. One guy's modifying a Harbor Freight pump that is incorporated to run both directions. It's a centrifuge pump that he says wire it and you can reverse the flow to do the push-pull system. There's a lot of that available. It just depends on how much time you have to wait through. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I don't know if you covered this a little bit earlier. Could you give us just a couple more details about your two different accounts? I mean, a member pays $450 and then fuel cost is $1 a gallon, is that it?
Yeah, well, The usables fund, everyone funds the usables at 100. The reason for that is they're never going to probably be taking more than that off the farm, and they pay back into the usables at $1 a gallon for every gallon they take. So essentially, they've made a deposit of $100 into the usables.
Okay.
The 450 is a vesting system for members, and we decided to encourage folks to pay into the capital, and that's the 450 that I mentioned.
And you said that you guys had a buyout option. I mean, is there a sellout option for a member? I mean, for $450, can you say, hey, I think I'm going to leave, can I have my money back, and this is a bond, or?
I have given that option to my members, and people have said, you know what, I can't participate, but I'm just leaving I'm leaving the funds in there. Honestly.
That's nice.
And so I have maintained a reserve to be able to either buy a member out or pay a member if they choose to leave.
Wow.
But it hasn't become an issue with me because I'm very cautious about who comes. That's another piece of the co-op model that I think doesn't always happen. And I'm pretty, I have become more serious about screening.
You got how many members now?
We now have 10, and we have decided we're probably not going beyond 10, unless we move spaces, which will involve a much more major capital outlay. We'll do another essential round of financing within the group to decide if we're going to do that.
Quick comment on that. We're getting a lot of calls from people wanting to join the co-op. Everybody wants cheap fuel, but we don't have enough working members. So we're actually having to kind of say, what are you after? And we feel a little discriminatory. We're having to kind of say, you can go away. It feels a little weird to us to have to, in some sense, discriminate against people who don't want to get dirty.
Because you guys are discriminating against people who just want to show up at the pump and put the fuel in their car?
Yeah, we just don't have enough labor
Yeah.
to process more. So we are kind of having to pull back a little bit and get a little more selective. But like I said, you can start feeling exclusive, which feels kind of weird as a co-op. But I think especially as you go larger, that's going to be a big struggle, is how do you keep it all friendly and neighborly. And well, if it's 4 guys, it's pretty easy to figure out who's doing what and where you're going. At 10, it's more difficult. At 20, as you get bigger, that's going to become an increasingly larger challenge, is how to manage the members and capacity.
In terms of that management, and I apologize for jumping all over the place, but I'll follow up on that. Actually, no, I won't. I will park it like I said I was going to. We're over here now. Calendaring and management of your email stream. The quick answer for that is Yahoo groups or another private group. You can use Google Groups, you can do any of that. If you're still learning about those things, learn them quickly before your members start shooting around these totally uncontrolled email strings. The 4-person group was where we started, where we've gone up to 10, for the reason of growing to a larger processor. We decided we didn't want to be down there working every weekend, and Steve kind of addressed that problem of members wanting to just show up and get fuel. We've had some folks say, hey, I'd really love to pay for your whole system and then you can work for me. That's not why we did it. So you have to be cautious with, again, what that goal is, and starting with that goal and working your way backward, in my opinion. Questions?
Maybe you're going to address it in a little bit, but I'm wondering more specifically about the equipment and any modifications that you're choosing to deal with as you scale up in terms of waste streams and efficiency. Is it?
I will pull up 2 things on that. Pump and mixing options. And this mixing options will answer actually other people that want to go up quite a bit further as well, because I've just become a religious zealot on ultrasonic cavitation. So we can talk a bit about that. To follow up on the last point, we were growing up to about 10 and we decided that this was enough, that we wanted to work every other weekend or we wanted to work every third weekend, and having an extra crew to follow up the next weekend would do that for us. So that was where the kind of sweet spot for us was. How many people are involved in these? You guys didn't get a chance to answer. How large a system are you hoping?
2 of us?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're talking about 15 members right now, and we're doing like 400 gallons a month.
400 a month, 15 members? And the CU guys, how big are you going?
30 gallons. Two 30 gallons.
Two 30-gallon crop. Okay, so we've got a huge spread everywhere. What I'd like to do is make sure to address this tech part of it before we run out of time. And then come back to the management. Any other questions folks would like to get answered specifically before I move on to some pictures of parts and different options for websites?
We are going to touch on waste stream stuff, right?
The management email stream and waste stream will keep both of those. I'm sorry, this presentation stuff is not working for me, so I have to keep switching back and forth. The first part of scaling up for us was the tank. The next part was dealing with the oil. And what our biggest problem with that aspect was how do we get the capacity of oil we need? And one of the requirements, one of the things that we decided was that if you're going to be in this co-op, you're going to have to begin working on oil accounts. So that's how we solved that problem. And it seems to be working relatively well. We actually have a relatively sizable surplus of oil. And I can't seem to find, unfortunately, my picture of it.
So are all of your members required to get new oil accounts?
We actually reached a point where we didn't need to do it anymore, so now our members are not. But my concern about beginning to lose oil accounts, I've reactivated that just recently and had more folks begin collecting, so that if we hit 150% of our capacity, we'll turn it off again. And that active management of whether you go out and find more will be then dependent on if we begin losing accounts.
And has that been effective?
It has. Our initial problem was too little, and we got to the point where it was too much.
But your co-op's fairly geographically spread out, right?
Yes, and that was that idea of catchment, having a larger catchment area. We have the advantage that we've got somebody that's in the Chicago area. They can really begin rustling for, well, I shouldn't use that term because grease rustling has been a disparaging term. At least beating the street for more options. I live in a metropolitan area. I live in Milwaukee and have some options for very good oil. And so it hasn't been an issue for us. Honestly, we haven't had to really work too hard to get oil.
So you're not worried about a member getting an account that's 20 miles out of your way?
No, because that's going to be that member's problem.
Oh,
If we say, hey, you know, this is something where it doesn't work into any kind of route, we have members check in. I have on the planning document what people's oil collection potential is and what they can turn on or turn off if there is an option to turn on 1,000 gallons here. Maybe we'll say to everyone else, either convert those over, and what I've done to deal with that capacity is I've actually networked with some other producers and other people that want oil, and I have given people oil accounts, just said, okay, you're gonna get 80 more gallons a week if you want it, and people, yeah, I'll take it. So I do kind of some community building and get goodwill in the community. If we're scaling up, people start to worry about that, but if we're scaling up and we're giving people oil accounts, we are known as the ones that will take care of the community. So that capacity also has another bartering function as well.
Your waste oil collection stream. What's a rough estimate of how much storage capacity you have for waste oil compared to gallons per week, per month produced fuel? And I guess I'd like other co-ops to weigh in this. Steve, if you've got
this is a big question of your throughput. You're asking about throughput compared to your oil process capacity?
I guess on both sides of it. Yeah, both waste vegetable oil storage and final fuel storage compared to production per time period.
We are on a can't do it. We are on 3 to 1 to 1.5, essentially. 3 times the capacity of our processor, 1.5 times the capacity of our processor for storage. So
Oil and fuel?
yeah, and what we decided, that's actually 3 times the capacity of our oil processor in finished oil. So we have actually it's 4 times. We have a 1,000-gallon tank, but we don't fill it up. And then we have 3 cubies, 3 275-gallon totes that are part of a processing system that allows for being able to, if for some reason we lost a bunch of oil accounts, we would, in that time period, probably drain our tank, but not stop production.
And one set of processor capacity is based on gallons per month, is that right? Or
You mean the ratio?
yeah,
Or,
yeah. I mean,
the ratio is actually, that's just the physical presence of it, but our collection capacity is about 3 times what our processing capacity per month is.
per month.
Yeah. 1.5 times the storage includes our drying and filtering tank. We have a 275-gallon storage tank plus our drying and filtering, which is half the size of our processor. Great question. Others? I'll keep looking for these pictures. I apologize. They were part of the original.
And I'll chime
Steve,
in.
can you actually, can you address the waste streams question now?
Yeah. Because in scaling up, I see a big problem with your waste stream management becomes that much more important. Dealing with 100 gallons of wash water a month is one thing, 1,000 gallons completely another, and 10,000 gallons is really a whole different deal. Oftentimes the techniques or methods of whatever you're going to do with either your wash water or your glycerin will change quite a bit. Say going down the drain with your wash water, 100 gallons a week is really not very much at all. Whereas 1,000 gallons, it is more serious, and 10,000 gallons, they would probably notice that it's coming, and you'd be in a much more a serious regulatory environment. Especially with your glycerin. I was just reading in one of the national magazines, I think it was Diesel Truck Magazine, a manufacturer of systems saying, well, that glycerin, you just sprinkle that in your backyard. Wow. Especially if that's 500 gallons a month, your backyard is going to look like, that's going to be a real problem. So I think I would almost be figuring out where all of those materials are going before you even think about building the processor. It's fun building processors, Dealing with the tail end of the equation, though, is where you're going to get into trouble. So I would spend a lot of time on making sure you have that figured out. This year we're selling our glycerin. We're getting between $1.20 and $1.50 a gallon. Finding that outlet would be very important for this equation.
Who you sell to? Good question.
It's a glycerin refinery. So this is something that's going to become more prevalent. So if all of you are looking for a place to get rid of your glycerin, what's happening is a lot of biodiesel plants, when they designed them, they built in a glycerin refinery. But 3 to 5 years ago, the glycerin market dropped out. There was no market for glycerin. Now that market is great. They're getting 80 cents a pound for their glycerin.
Demethylated or methylated?
They're paying 12 cents a pound with methanol in and 15 cents a pound with it out. So a lot of plants that are not economically viable now are bringing on phase 2 of their construction scheme. So they're actually completing the glycerin refinery part of the plant. So what I would do is go to the National Biodiesel Board and see where biodiesel plants are, who has them, and see who's refining glycerin. There is a glycerin refinery society. They might not have existed a couple years ago, but they may now. What we're looking into doing is, it's fairly close to the Chicagoland area. We're working with them to perhaps develop a route to pick up from home brewers. So if there's sufficient volume there, we love the idea of having them run a route to pick up glycerin. Because if we're paying $2.50 a gallon for methanol, if we're getting $1.50 for the glycerin, we've lowered our cost of production substantially. So working out those angles are going to be incredibly important for the economic viability of this. Because as you get larger, the risks also get inherently larger also. So
one last question, Sue. Sorry. Just that FOB, are they paying freight or are you paying freight?
They actually will not be operational until next week probably, and they will be contracting with a commercial hauler. So they want to run a route, and they haven't figured that out yet. There are definitely some logistics involved with that. They're nameplated for 5 million gallons, and I think they'll only produce maybe 20% of that. So they're going to be seeking out customers.
Thank you very much.
And that's one option we've considered for the glycerin. We have not had to deal that much with it because our plan was for composting, and there are commercial composting facilities that will take it as well.
We've actually started a pilot project with our local landfill. They compost all yard waste, grass clippings, leaves, so they have a huge compost facility. They charge us $20 a ton to compost our glycerin. That actually works very well. If any of you were interested in getting your municipality into composting, they could call the Iowa City landfill, and they've had very good luck with it. They use about 30% less water on their compost piles because the glycerin does not evaporate as quickly. The wash water also, our wastewater treatment plant does not want our wash water. Even our treated wash water, they would want about 6 cents a gallon to treat it, to accept it. For land application, we have to avoid it pooling or running off into waterways. So smaller volumes are fairly easy to apply, but those larger volumes are where we start to get into trouble. You would run into sour soil conditions eventually. So your ability to handle that water would be based on your local wastewater treatment plant or how much land you had to apply it. If you're in a rural area, farmers will pay for that wash water. It has some potassium value left in it.
As you guys have scaled up, have you looked at dry washing as a viable option for you?
Yeah, we have. In Iowa, landfills will no longer accept magnazol. And this is going to go nationwide. So if you're using magnazol, you'd better figure something out really quick. Our local DNR just brought up a paper. It's spontaneously combusting and starting to dump on fire, which they're not into.
gets rid of the trash.
We're very into appropriate levels of technology, and we're looking to reduce any resources we're bringing in. So to ship some ion exchange beads from Germany into here and have a very expensive consumable that if you were to degrade it or trash it out, talk about messing up your numbers. We're very cautious about new technologies. We're sticking with things that are tried and true. You know, obviously, Kyle, you know, getting into cavitation, there are always new things out there, but especially on this larger scale, some of these things do not scale well at all. It may work great in a test tube or in a liter batch. It might work fine at 100 gallons, but 1,000 gallons, it may be complete nonsense. So I think as you scale up, it's very important to scrutinize these technologies and make sure as you get bigger, you can't cut corners anymore. When you're small, you may be able to get away with kind of sketching by on some things, but when you get into these larger levels, you really take away a lot of that veil of secrecy. All of a sudden, you're a major waste producer. And I think also, small scale, they catch you doing some of the things that we've touched on, they might let you fly, but on a really large scale, how does a $20,000 fine affect your cash flow? These are very serious issues.
Yeah, I'd make a comment on that point. Just said in my limited experience, if you're doing a small scale personal use and you break some laws or rules, generally they're not going to be too tough on you, but where I live, if you're in commercial production and you're breaking all the rules, they're going to bring as many hammers down on you as you find.
And to add to that point, one of the other things that does in general is make biodiesel look better. And we're very cautious of presenting anything that makes homebrewing in particular look like a bunch of yahoos out in the woods. And it's really important if we're going to keep this viable and then begin growing it and suggest as a community that this is a really good idea, taking our waste streams and firing them down with a BOD of, you know, biological load of 300,000 when, you know, the highest is going to be, you know, typically that a plant is going to, a wastewater treatment plant is going to see is about 60. You got yourselves some problems. And they know, they see that coming in. That hits sensors. It's not like they don't see. It's not like if you send a bolus of 1,000 gallons down, they're not going to know. It spreads out in 22, 30, 50 gallon increments. But you hit probably that 200, 250 gallon mark, and you're going to start to attract some attention very quickly. So think appropriately. Think about your waste streams very appropriately. Some numbers on waste streams. We looked at having pickups in our area from an environmental treatment company. They would pick up our bins. We had some 55-gallon drums of junk and general things that had been experiments gone wrong and such. They actually, surprisingly, only charged a $45 fee to pick up 3 55-gallon drums. Okay, well that's fine when you're doing this on a small scale. Multiply that by a 250-gallon tote, by a 1,000-gallon tank, and all of a sudden, all of the money you've saved by brewing biodiesel is gone again. So that's another number to consider. What is remediation of some mistakes if you do this on wastewater treatment or on glycerin dumping, or if you have an oil spill? The worst spill we've had, thankfully, has only been 30 gallons. We've been very lucky. We had capacity for dealing with a 200-gallon tank if necessary. On 30 gallons of oil dropped onto soil, we used 150 pounds of cat litter, a full spill kit containment socks, and a whole lot of time and a bunch of swearing. So, and we had that in place. Literally, one person actually had to go and get more cat litter because we exhausted our entire supply. So, just planning.
If you're getting bigger, I would recommend establishing a relationship with Seneca Industries. They're a pollution remediation service. They're nationwide. But if you have a big spill,
Senator, right? S-E-N.
yeah, getting it cleaned up immediately is a heck of a lot cheaper than having it cleaned up several days later, or your fire department cleaning it up. These people take care of spills. I'm sure they're not cheap, but we carry their business card in our collection vehicle. If we were to spill 300 gallons of oil, you're not going to clean it up yourself. You'd better know who to call quickly.
And to add to that, Steve mentioned that he's got that, and you make 2 other phone calls, right? There are 3 phone calls you make if you have a spill?
At the University of Iowa, they have a really, really tough SPCC plan. If we spill even a shot glass of oil, I've got 3 numbers on my speed dial that have to be notified immediately. They're pretty hardcore about it. And well, for good reason. You have to live by the rules of the places you're picking up from also. If you do get into a university or hospital, they've got serious rules about collection that you're going to have to follow.
And in general, they have an emergency contact person, and they'll activate an entire phone tree like that. And don't cover it up. You might lose the account, but you're doing exactly what they want. You're doing their standard operating procedure.
Just wanted to add to the Seneca Industries deal. Was trying to get a site permitted, did contact Seneca Industries. They turned me on to a more local source. That local source sent me a letter. And so I included that. In California, you need to have an SPCC plan, no matter what you're trying to do. Some places it's 3 pages, some places it's 50 pages. But they'll send you a letter saying that they will respond to any spill. And that goes a long way with building a relationship with the fire department.
Perfect example. Didn't cost you anything but an hour time.
Absolutely, less than that. They've got a form letter they'll send out, because they're used to companies calling and saying, hey, we'll contact you if you've got a spill. If you send me a letter saying, I've spoken to you.
Excellent.
Can I give you one more resource that might be helpful on a nationwide basis? I just came across this, so I don't have a website. I'm sure you can find them on the web. Their name is Spill Center, an environmental spill management specialist with more than 15 years of experience. Spill Center maintains a database of more than 3,000 contractors throughout North America to assist customers in identifying local resources for spills. They also assist in coordinating local, state, and federal release reporting, and they monitor nearly 30,000 federal, state, and local jurisdictions across the U.S., track changes in regulations, and maintain current environmental reporting regulations and contact information.
Waste management also has a service.
Yeah.
All of the big waste folks in your area, just look on a trash bin who is around. If you haven't identified who your trash haulers are, who your environmental services companies are, we have phone numbers handy for Waste Management, Veolia, who's another environmental services company, and we also there are state phone numbers for that as well. If you haven't done any of this work and then all of a sudden you call the state, you're going to run into problems. But if you have contacted them and said, we want to know if there are any specific numbers that we should call if we have a spill, then at least we're in the system. Yeah, we've got a very short time for the rest of this. So parking lot, a couple of things that I want to address here. Pumps, there are some, for these mid-sized systems, we'll call it 250, 500 gallons, honestly, I don't think I've found anything that can beat Murphy's pump. It's like 1.5 horsepower monster that you can plumb right into the system, simply through a pump. $350 or something, made to run 24 hours a day. It's a pretty sizable, like an even 56 engine, and a pump head that he had specifically designed. There are, I don't want to encourage a single product, but I honestly really haven't found a better one for if you're just going to be pumping stuff around. Question?
If you can find a jet pump the advantage of a jet pump, especially if you're mixing, man, it mixes that methanol and your potassium extremely good, extremely fast, and you get a lot of turbulation.
If that is an explosion proof, are you talking about mixing direct methanol, methoxide, actually doing your KOH and methanol? So finding an explosion proof jet pump might be a little different story, but yeah. Another way to go if you're doing methoxide mixing with a pump is you can do air-powered diaphragm pumps. There are a few of them available for some of the biodiesel websites, as well as if you go to your Granger or Farm Tech or one of the supply companies, you can actually get one. We didn't have time to really address pump curves or anything like that, but reading a pump curve, it basically gives you the head of the pump, how much the pump can push on a curve based on the amount of pressure you created, or in the case of some of these others, based on the gallons per hour that you can lift.
On these larger size tanks, how important is the mixology that you're employing?
As you size up, that's one way of addressing it is with a big burly pump. Another is multiple injection sites or multiple withdrawal sites is one way of doing it. In fact, it doesn't seem to be that big a problem if you're willing to let it mix for longer and do testing as you're brewing. Some folks want to have a set time that they do it. What we do is we do 15-minute increments of 327 tests, just as a go, no-go, keep it running. And then we go one increment beyond what we really think we need to. So generally, that's an option. The third option that I alluded to was the ultrasonic option. I have one picture of our cavitator in here that's probably worth showing. What did I write there? Mixing options, I guess. That aspect of mixing, doing the multiple injection, is important from not having any dead spots in your tank. We picked the oval tanks for the reason that there is really nothing in the tank for anything to get caught on. As you start to fab tanks and do things like that, you can have little areas where you may actually get oil reservoirs in there, and that's what Steve's asking about. Well, how good is the mixing? A lot of the things that have been applied to the Appleseed need to be scaled up in a way that makes sense for your tank as well. The multiple injection ports is one way of doing that. We welded in, ours had a bunch of 2-inch NPT ports on it, but we welded in some extra 1-inch, and we're able to redirect into 2 or 3 different ports if we need to. Now, you'll have to also deal with what pump you're working with. You may all of a sudden lose a bunch of your pressure as it goes through the pump, then you try to split it. So you may have to change from a 1 1/4 inch or 1 1/2 inch intake to 1 inch if you're going to split it. So if, again, that skill set, your plumber, can start to balance your pressures.
Can you speak a little more specifically about cavitator, what that is? And
Yeah,
how it's
the ultrasonic is kind of our newest fun item. Let me pull up the pretty picture. Actually, it's not a particularly pretty picture, but it's worth seeing.
And this is, you would recommend this for the mid-size 250?
Yeah, I honestly, I would recommend this for most systems at this point. I haven't. The caveat that I will add is that I really have not experimented with it enough, but we were easily able to do an 80-gallon batch in 45 minutes with it, and that's relatively close to a single pass through it, not much more.
So Your
This is
mixing
just a
is,
basic
your
flow cell.
mixing is done separate from where it's going into the tank, really.
Yeah, well, let me just show the picture just so you can get a better idea of it. There are a lot of ways to do flow cells. If you want to do one, take a second to load this because it's coming off of.
You lost your signal in the projector too.
Really?
It's on a timer.
No, it's just a,
It's coming back.
Oh, okay.
Um,
So this is a 2-tank Appleseed conglomeration that we made for a test bed for this ultrasonic system. I don't have a picture of the flow cell innards, but Bob, our plumber, tied in this is all coming in at 1 inch and sizes up to a 2-inch black pipe simple system. Flow cell is right here and forces the material up to make contact with the walls and also the tip of the ultrasonic processor. It is forced to flow up along and then back down and through. This is just a bypass, so we're not worried about this. We're worried about this system here, flows back, goes into the top of the processor. You have to watch your heat with this. We have right below this, unfortunately my photo didn't show it, incoming heat and back pressure. And then we also have heat of the tank. We have been experimenting with a homemade system that Bob may end up building some and selling them on the order of about $1,500 is what I'm guessing. But it's currently only running at 20% power on a 300 watt ultrasonic unit. This is a basic unit that's mounted right up here. And, you know, it's nothing pretty to look at, but it was sure a nice addition. And we are going to incorporate an ultrasonic into the 250-gallon processor. I've been running experiments on this now for a few weeks to see. We did some 327 just processing experiments, and then in addition, I've just taken some samples, and we're going to hopefully I'll get an opportunity to run through GC and possibly just run a safe test on. We'll see. But this is all very, very basic plumbing and learning a little bit about the electronics of an ultrasonic processor. And it really can add to, I think, most systems. You can also talk to Greg from Piedmont. He swears by it as well. And it's probably, if anything, if you walk away with anything, start thinking about ultrasonics.
Open source references for.
If you start doing some searching for ultrasonics there's a German company that's actually selling systems, but there are 2 papers out there as well as a few references on the Biodiesel Info forums that actually have some explanation of how they did it. It isn't rocket science. Other questions?
The ultrasonic transducer is just a pipe with a transducer in it and reaction completeness, is that right?
Yeah, it does a very local cavitation. So you're changing your sphere size, you're minimizing your sphere size, and that's exactly what we're looking for when we're producing biodiesel. That contact surface is where you're going to get. So if your sphere size is smaller, you have a larger surface area in total that's reacting, and in theory, that should be allowing you to go to completion. Some of the claimed experiments were single pass, led to 99% conversion. I haven't seen evidence of that yet. But
The benefit here for an Appleseed would be, I mean, if you're just doing a recirculating pump and waiting for the thing to mix itself in the water heater, that you would be able to do this a lot faster if you were to add a turn?
Yeah, and that's why we're putting a system in, our larger one is, even with a large pump, you're still turning it over many times. Well, if you can pass it through a single time, if we'll experience this, you pass it through a single time. Yeah.
Okay.
And you can drop your heat. Sorry for the poor organization, but we had to throw this together real quick. Anyone, any more questions? I've got to get running. I don't, Steve, are you able to stick around for a second? You got if you got any further questions directed to Steve, you can also email me.
Watch the cord there, bud.
That's our fancy.
How'd it go over here? Blizzard. Well, we did. Oh, yeah. We did a little bit. 26. Well, that took like 2 minutes to open. Like 5 minutes to open the plastic from those things.
Is it on the website? Right.
So is this still the same tape that's been running the whole time? I came in here and it was still going. Okay, so then it is. Yeah. Should I turn it on? Yeah, you can turn it on.